I may be one of the only people here with a KZEW bumper sticker still on their car. So, I do notice that, Jeff, you invited no one from Q102. I think that's a little weird. Redbeard didn't want to come? Fuck him. Which I believe was the motto of KZEW. And the edge for one. But all that said, I'm very, very delighted, honored, and thrilled to be on this stage with these folks. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, only in as much as that I want them to tell you a little bit about themselves. You may know some of these folks. You should know everybody. Nancy down there, Shaggy, somebody I've known most of my life. Went to junior high together, as a matter of fact. And Alex W. Spence. Used to buy records from you when you were working at Sound Warehouse on Lemon and...
Ninth Street.
Ninth Street. Yep. Sorry, I'm old. So, Shaggy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and Amy, Eddie, and Jeff, and Brett. So I've already introduced everybody in a very shorthand way, but Nancy, it's all you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight. This is going to be fun and informative and maybe inspiring. So I was born Nancy Moore, which is a very boring name. And so when at the age of 16, I got invited to do a radio show on Saturday nights, late night from midnight to 4 a.m. on K-KNON, a nonprofit station here in Dallas. I was going to be doing punk rock music. I thought, well, I need a better name. I need a radio name. And my friend Nanine, who I was in a little band with called the Sporadics, she had already been calling me Shaggy, because before that band we were going to have a band called Sheena Shag and the Bunk Ups. That band never materialized.
I can't imagine why.
But the Sporadics did. So I was Shaggy, and I just opened up the mic, and I had no idea how to do a radio show. But I opened up the mic and I said, "Hi, I'm Shaggy. Here's the Clash." And there it went.
Amy, why don't you give a brief introduction? That's a perfectly timed, that's the greatest length. So I just want everybody to pay attention that Shaggy knows what she's doing.
Okay, 60 seconds or less.
Right.
Brief and brilliant.
I'm Amy Miller, and up until just a few months ago, actually, I was the program director of 91.7 KXT here in Dallas. I am still doing middays. I'm the midday host there. Left a few months ago to pursue artist management, managing an amazing artist out of Fort Worth right now named Abraham Alexander, and I'm actually also doing some work with Edwin, who owns this wonderful venue. And is in the process of buying the Longhorn Ballroom. So doing a few different things right now, but been doing radio since I was in college, since I was about 19 years old.
The only person on this stage who was once employed by Bruce Hornsby to work at his radio station.
That is correct. I've done radio pretty much all around the country, started in California, and then my first full-time radio gig was as music director at a small market station in Virginia that Bruce Hornsby owned.
Very cool. And now, the man who is the second longest running hip hop DJ. First longest. Is he first now? The other guy said, "I'm done."
They've been done.
Oh, he's been done. The longest running hip hop disc jockey in the United States of America, probably on the planet,
Yeah.
Easy Eddie D.
I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. My birth name was Eddie Murphy. This is a true story. Like it just, So I was destined, to say the least. But I came to K-KNON in 1987. Well, actually, 86. I got my own show in 87. I became the mix DJ for Nippy Jones, who had the Fresh Freaky Friday show that came on for Fridays from 12 to 4. And yeah, that deserves that. And after that, Craig Taylor, he's the one who gave me my show, and it was the best thing ever that happened to me. I used to go to parties and just stand there and look at DJs and watch the way the crowd would respond when something like, you know, One Nation in the Groove or Flashlight would come on, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to control people. And so here I am today. You know what I mean? But K-KNON has been the best thing for me. And I'm honored to be here, and I'm just gonna pass it over to this man right here.
Speaking of people who like to control people, Jeff Kennedy. Jeff, you obviously have a K-KNON connection all the way through the most corporate of American radio.
Yes, currently with the Evil Empire.
That's right.
But no, I too got my start at K-KNON when it was at 90.9. I did a show on Saturday afternoons called Thud Slap, which was based kind of an industrial. Oh, thank you, Shaggy. Shaggy was one of the reasons why I wanted to get on K-KNON, along with George Baum, who did the fabulous Chicken Gristle show on Saturday afternoons. Very inspirational. This was pre-Edge, so there really wasn't an outlet for that kind of music on the radio, and this was after George Gimark's tenure with the Rock and Roll Alternative. He was also kind of dipping his toes in K-KNON for a while, but he was working on something bigger that started in 1989. It was the Edge. Now, I didn't get in right away, but I got there soon enough. I got there in 1990, so I'm proud to say I was part of the first generation Edge DJ lineup, and I stayed at the Edge till 96. Went out to California for a couple of years. I did a show on Saturday nights on the Edge called Edge Club 94, which was, for whatever reason, they let me just play like crazy techno and rave music from 1991 to 1996 when nobody was doing it in America. And I parlayed that into like a techno summer camp radio gig in LA for 2 years. And then came back and spent 8 years at the 93.3 frequency, 3 formats, and 6 program directors. It was the Zone, then it was Merge, then it was the Bone. Anybody remember Merge Radio? Do you remember?
No, but you don't really remember.
Sure you do. Did a show on Sunday nights called Submerge that I was very proud of. It was kind of like down-tempo, ethereal, a lot of Moby, Massive Attack type stuff. And then I just couldn't survive when Cumulus took over. They basically looked at all the folks that had been there and said, oh, you make too much money, you're gone. They didn't touch the ticket for some reason. Ticket, very successful radio station. So I went over to work part-time for Clear Channel, and now it's been 15 years. And I worked for ZPS, I worked for the Edge for a while, I did the old school Edge show on Sunday mornings, which was a lot of fun, and now I'm doing afternoons. When John Dillon retired, I took over afternoons on Lone Star 92.5. So I've been doing that now for about 6 years. And I also moonlight with the Cowboys and the Stars as the public address announcer.
Long story short, there is not a format in which you have not worked in this town, except this man's format.
Truth.
Brett, please tell the folks, you've been in radio since 1975, but you've been here since 1996, and I'm fascinated by your story.
Well, I was here in Dallas from 60 to 65, moved away when I was 5 years old, went up to Michigan, messed up my accent, so I had to move to the Midwest after 4 years of being in Michigan. Went to Grand Island, center of Nebraska, 1975. We had a little local radio station, had a glass window on the main street, and I decided to hang out there every day, every afternoon for about 2 weeks, and the owner came out and goes, do you want a job? And I said, sure. So I ran the weekend program the whole week in the countryside of AM, and I got to play, I guess it was Bob Kingsley, an American Country Countdown on Saturday mornings and do a live weather report. I thought I was God. And my voice was not like this. I was like Bobby Brady. But yeah, they hired me. I was in Weatherford for about 9 years. I came back in the 80s, so the zoo and all the rock I was going to Sound Warehouse every day and buying every damn record. I was hearing Melissa Etheridge, and it just goes on and on and on. I mean, that was my whole life. And I would like to compete to see if anybody's went to as many rock concerts as I have. Or music. I've been going since I was 69. My first one was Black Oak, Arkansas.
Wow.
That was 9. It was at a park, and they had funny cigarettes, and they said, no more concerts in Grand Island, Nebraska. Anyway, I've been there. I've been at KHYI 95.3 Range this is my 26th year.
Wow.
And we do a concert every year. We're going to do it in the whole city of McKinney, and we bring about 107 bands over 2 days.
That's extraordinary.
Including Old Crow Medicine Show, and just like the rock guys, the people that I didn't know who they were, that's what I kind of had the chance to do too, because my whole life has been rock. How many people went to the Stones concert at Cotton Bowl?
Yeah.
Been there.
I was there.
Saw him there. saw him
I've seen him 20 times. Like,
Saturday.
I'm just a madness for rock.
Well, what I want to begin with is the fact that, look, I always found, for me, radio is far more important than television. I fell asleep every night when I was a kid with my transistor radio under my pillow, listening to KNUS, listening to the Zoo, listening to Q102 and other stations. For me, those were my friends. And it wasn't just the bands they were playing, but it was the people who were introducing them. And for me, it's very interesting because I've gotten to know many of you on this panel, and Amy and Brett, we've just met, but certainly I know many of you, and Shaggy, we grew up together. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what radio meant to you, because the moment the ticket let me on the air was the moment that was the greatest moment of my life. I never wanted to stop being on the radio because I liked connecting with people and talking to people who were my friends, or who I imagined were my friends, or who may one day become my friends. But Shaggy, for you, that certainly was a significant part of who you were and what the Pajama Party was about. When you were in Texas Monthly, on the cover of Texas Monthly, actually you weren't. The story about you was on the cover of Texas Monthly. There was talk about making a film about you with Molly Ringwald playing you in a John Hughes version of your life story. Because certainly you meant something to a generation of Dallasites. And I want to talk to you about what responsibility all of you have felt about being that voice in somebody's ear. But I want to start with you, Nancy.
Well, all right. That's a broad spectrum of topics here to condense, but I'll do my best. Yeah, so I felt at the time in like 1982, I spent the day today listening to some 1982 music. I was listening to Paul Weller and the Jam, and because it was all misty and cool and London-y like today, I just thought it was a good day for that. But the sound of those songs, Absolute Beginners, that exciting music that was different. There just, other than George Gemark, there just wasn't any way to access that music in Dallas at that time unless you happened to see a live show come through. It was very, very much about the scene and the music community. And like Robert said, connecting with people. It was the music scene. It was people who liked the same bands that you liked, showing up at the same show and going to another show next week and talking about last week's show and talking about the one that was coming up and did you hear about so-and-so. And that music was so different. The kids at school, in my high school, they were still listening to the last generation's music, which there's nothing wrong with the last generation's music. They were listening to The Who and Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix and all that. And they really loved those bands, and that's great. But there was this whole new flood of music that the kids my age, at least in my neighborhood, they didn't even know about. But I knew about it. And I wanted the world to know about it. I wanted the world to know about that music real bad because I wanted all the music to be like that. And I figured the more I could get it out there, the sooner it would be like that. And I kind of watched it happen. It was, in that day and time, there was no internet. You couldn't just punch up a song somebody told you about on Spotify on your phone. It was not in the palm of your hand. You had to get up and go out and find it and get it. And at the time, when I started the show in 1984 and was working at Sound Warehouse, I had moved out of my parents' home and moved out on my own at 17. And I remember walking to work from some friends and I rented a house on Cole Avenue. It was a big old mansion type house built in 1912 with columns on the porch and a big oak tree in the front yard. It was so much fun. anyway, I would walk up to Sound Warehouse, which was, I don't know, maybe a mile away. And I remember thinking on my way there many times, I was thinking, God, you know, I just feel like the music world is really about to just, the doors are going to be blown open. I can feel this wave coming of things really changing. And they really did. You know, I think when later on, when George Gamark started The Edge and stuff, and things started becoming, that type of music became more mainstream, which at my time, in my day, that was my goal. I wanted that to happen, but then when it actually started happening, then of course you turn into the old fogey, well, I was doing that way before y'all were, and when I did it, it was really cool. Okay, but it happened, and I'm glad it did, and it's great. But while I was experiencing all of that and going to KNON every Saturday night and doing a 4-hour radio show in the middle of the night, a writer for Texas Monthly magazine lived here in Dallas and I guess listened to my show or knew about it. He probably read about it in the Dallas Observer. Dusty Rhodes did a small piece about me and my show. And so this guy, David Seeley, decided that he wanted to pitch a cover story to Texas Monthly, and he followed me around for an entire year of my life, a whole year. He interviewed me once a week, once every 2 weeks. And when the story came out in May of 1985, it was a cover story in Texas Monthly, and it went month by month. You can still find this story. It's called the Shaggy Club. You can Google it. But it went month by month of that year. And you know, when you're that age, a year of your life is like 5 years because you do so much. You're doing so many things every day. Today I get up and go to the store and get coffee. That's my day. But anyway, I have some, I don't know, I have one big regret that I wanted to talk about with that, and that is that the movie never got made. The story, the Texas Monthly story, got shopped to some producers in Hollywood. Next thing I knew, I'm 18 and I'm on a plane to LA and I'm meeting with Aaron Spelling in his office. And I never had much money. My parents were both disabled by the time I was 19 years old. My dad got early onset Alzheimer's the year he turned 60, and that was right before my freshman year of high school. It was in the summer before I was a freshman. So I never had much money. I didn't really get to go to movies and stuff. I had never seen The Breakfast Club, but all my friends had seen The Breakfast Club. And so when John Hughes met with us, he was like, "Have you seen The Breakfast Club?" I'm like, "No." And he goes, well, we're gonna fix that right now. So we had a private screening. It was in a little theater on the studio lot, theater about this size, me and John Hughes and David Seeley, the three of us in an empty theater watching The Breakfast Club. It was a day I will not forget that day. But so it was a ton of pressure. It was a whole ton of pressure because I'm 18, and it sounds a little silly now, but back then it was important to me that people took me seriously, and the kids in the punk rock generation had this thing about being a poser. If you were a poser, you were out. You had to be legit, man. You had to have your street cred. And so I really wanted John Hughes to make the movie, but because he was less of a poser. Between the two, Aaron Spelling, Love Boat, John Hughes, Breakfast Club, I wanted the lesser of two evils. He was still big and commercial and a little too polished for punk rock, but hey, It was the better deal. They would think I was more sincere. I want that. Couldn't get that because things had happened. The agents had gotten involved prematurely and started working deals that they didn't have the authority to work. And Aaron Spelling had his heart set on it, and he thought he was going to get the deal. And John Hughes didn't want to cross Spelling. John Hughes said, I can't make your movie. I'm like, but I want you to make my movie. You're the real deal. Can't do it. He says, I can't cross Spelling. If I do, he can mess things up for me here in Hollywood. So this agent guy that, one of the kids in the punk rock house that I was living in, Jenny, her dad worked for an advertising agency here in town, and she had gotten me hooked up with an actual entertainment lawyer and an agent. He was a literary agent. He'd gotten people book publishing deals, but he was trying his hand at being a movie agent. So anyway, they were all trying to help me out, and he said at the time, he's like, well, if you can't have John Hughes, what about this other guy? There's this other guy that we've been in touch with, and he really wants to make your movie, but he's only been doing made-for-TV movies. He's only made one movie for cinema so far, and it's called Risky Business. And I'm like, oh God, no, Tom Cruise is not punk rock. No, we're not doing that. Well, Steve Tisch, he ended up making Forrest Gump. That was a mistake. That was a mistake that an 18-year-old makes. And 18-year-olds make lots of other mistakes.
But it's at least a really good story.
Yeah. But anyway, Aaron Spelling is now departed, and someday I could write my own movie script.
And I hope you do. So I want to bring Eddie and Jeff in as much as that they came after you at KNON just a little bit. Because certainly KNON as the voice of the people was incredibly important. It served as a sort of, to me it was a cross between what Dallas AM radio had done in the 60s and what the FM had started to do in the mid to late 70s. It really was everything for everybody. Any show at any moment could be playing any song. And Eddie, I wanted to talk to you in some ways because you were to the hip hop generation what Shaggy was to the punk generation. And what was that like for you to play music that really was not getting a lot of airplay? Certainly KDGE was playing a little bit of that, but not to the extent and with the depth and breadth that you were playing in.
It was the perfect storm. You know, hip hop is the one genre of music that goes with anything because of sampling. You can sample a country song, and if you do it right, you got a hit on your hands. You can do it with opera. You can do it with anything. It's the only form of music because of sampling that you can utilize everything that's a part of your life. So, you know, I'm from Cincinnati. James Brown recorded all his music from King Records in Cincinnati. Bootsy Collins from Parliament Funkadelics. From going to Cincinnati to Dayton, Ohio, was like going to Dallas to Denton. And Dayton, Ohio is the home of funk. Lakeside, Heat Wave, there's tons of groups, Ohio Players, all from Dayton. So my whole music background was that, you know, along with Cat Stevens, like a lot of AM radio stuff. We're talking about the 70s. So I listened to everything. And when I got to KNON, you know, for me, like, you can't place a dollar on being able to pick your own music, to be able to say what you want to say. There's a big responsibility that comes with that. So for me, that's always been at the forefront of what I wanted to do with music. I wanted my music to be socially oriented. So I didn't play anything that was disrespectful to who we are as people. Because we make short, tall, gay, straight, we make all this stuff. These comes from hetero people, and we shit on all of it. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, I can use this music and social events and tie them all together and try to make some sense of all of this. So for me, it was just I don't know, you know, I used to be really, not religious, but I wanted to be a preacher. So, that was a long time ago, let me tell you. But now, but, you know, that's been my thing, you know what I mean? I admire people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin. I mean, like, there are a lot of people who had things to say that were important. And, you know, you call it underground, I call it thoughtful, you know. So it's always been a big thing for me. It's a badge of honor that, you know, to be able to do it from 1987 till now. My show is on tonight. I'm not there now because I'm here. So, you know what I mean? But, well, you know, it's...
But I mean, look, I guess what I'm getting at is, and Jeff, I'd like for you to talk about this as well, because of the three of you, look, when we were in high school, K-KNON, you went to hang out at the house. K-KNON had been in different houses, different locations. It was accessible.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think, and Amy, you can talk about this, I don't think kids are hanging out in front of KXT, although they certainly should. And I don't know about it at KHYI these days, but you know, when in the 60s,
Yeah.
kids were at KLIF at the corner of, you know, Commerce Street, and they were shouting requests to DJs. That's what K-KNON was, as far as I was concerned. It was the last of that. Was that like that when you got there, Jeff?
Well, the whole appeal of K-KNON to me was the fact that it really wasn't a format. It was format-less. Whoever was on the air was playing whatever they wanted to play. And that really appealed to me. And this was a station that wasn't based on ratings. That wasn't how they judged success. It was based on pledge drives. And in order to be successful at pledge drives, you really had to connect with your listeners. You had to find a way to make that passionate connection with them. And much like Shaggy talked about, you know, with that 1982 was the year I graduated high school. I was in high school from 79 to 82. And much like that musical revolution in the late 70s, early 80s with punk and new wave, when I got on at K-KNON, I was there from 88 to 90. And I went on after a goth show, and I led into a hip hop show. So my niche there was to try to embrace something in between, and what it was with Thud Slap was kind of an industrial slash house music slash a bit of sample based, you know, like Mars Pump Up the Volume type stuff. And you know, and George Baum, who was on before me, was doing the goth show. He worked at the Start Club, and that was really, to me, yeah, a moment for the Start Club. In the era of Go-Go Mike Dupriest, who was the DJ at the Start Club at the time, and he was a big K-KNON supporter. The whole idea of DJs being able to mix records and create this third record, you know, with the two records they were mixing, and this was before all digital, you were doing everything live with slabs of vinyl. To me, this was as revolutionary a culture in the late 80s as what was happening in the late 70s and early 80s. So that's really what I was trying to do on my show, was educate and embrace this culture that was, whether or not it started in England, you know, with the Summer of Love in 88. We kind of had our own Summer of Love thanks to the Start Club in 1988 here as well.
Ecstasy helped.
And it certainly did. Ecstasy helped a lot.
It really helped.
I've been told.
Like, it really helped.
But, so that was the connection that I was able to make with my listeners, was the passion for that culture. And I would bring guest DJs on, and I took that idea to the Edge with me when I did the Edge Club show. Every week we'd have a guest DJ. It was more about, you know, not, hey, I'm the steward of this. It was more like, hey, this is my party bus. I want everybody on, and that includes you, and what can you do to help kind of educate and push forth this revolution, say what you will about the disposable nature of dance music, but to me it was a revolution, and especially in the late 80s.
It's interesting, everybody up here has the ability to play local music in a way that most radio stations cannot. And Amy, I want to talk to you about that as well, because certainly KXT, I was very skeptical of it when it started, because I thought, well, all right, it's going to be one of those public radio stations that alternates between Wilco and Wilco, which is very much public radio.
We do that
today.
sometimes.
But also you had, KERA had a very rich tradition of having played music. Chris Doritas and Abby Goldstein had been there, for those of us who grew up with them, listening to them before Chris had gone to Los Angeles and KCRW. So what was your mindset in terms of what you wanted to play and what you could get away with playing?
Well, first of all, I actually moved to Texas in 2014, so I'm not a Texas native. Born and raised in California, and then lived on the East Coast for about 10 years. So coming here, I was very skeptical and a little scared to move to Texas, just because I had, the stereotypes in my head of what Texas was and what Dallas was. And then I moved here, didn't know anybody in Texas at all. Spent about 3 to 4 nights a week down in Deep Ellum, just walking around to the clubs, seeing music. And I was so pleasantly surprised and relieved after a few weeks of being here, just realizing how amazing the music scene is here. And I'm not just saying this, but I mean, it's better than I'd say anywhere I've lived, and I've lived quite a few places across the country. So that was really, really great, and just seeing how many music venues there are in Dallas for bands to play. I mean, that in and of itself is amazing. And then the music, of course, of all genres is really great. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, after being at the station for a year or two, we didn't have a local radio show on the station. So I ended up launching a local show on KXT, and it was a chance just for us to showcase, everything from all the great rock bands to hip hop to, I've played jazz artists on the station before. I forget what the question was, but I'm just gonna
It's
go
about
off.
your responsibility and ability.
Oh,
What's that? To play
Yeah, well,
local music.
and that's the other thing. Now with local music, and why it's so important for radio stations to support it, is because, especially with the commercial radio stations, so many of them sound the same, and that's because a lot of the times there's one guy in New York or one person in LA programming 100 stations across the country, so you don't get that local connection. And because there's so few radio stations that are able to do that and have that local connection, when you are working at a radio station that can do that, it's just so, so important. So, I've seen it with so many bands and artists here, just how important radio is in supporting local artists, and we'll play them on the radio station, and then they'll email me the next week saying, the promoter reached out to them about playing a show at a venue, or they got asked to open up some local music festival, and it just really can make a difference for local artists, and I just think radio is so important for that.
Well, Brad, that's what I want you to talk about. Because when you got here, certainly Y95 had been at that.
That was originally rock, yeah.
Right. So it was not country, not red dirt, not Americana, not the kind of stuff that you certainly have become known for. And local music has certainly found a home there at the Range as well. So talk about that transition, because Y95 was a whole different ballgame.
Well, it was like August. See, I was working in weather for like 9 years, and they were going to make a move. I think they were turning into Hindu, and it's the truth. I mean, you can't make it up. And so I needed some money, so I worked for a guy, I think it was June, July, and August, mowing lawns at 110-degree temperature for about 3 months. And then in August of '96, I got a call from Allen, Texas. And it was at that time, he would have been the mayor. It was a mom and pop, Ken Jones, Josh Jones, and their mom Glenda, just 3 of them as a mom and pop. And they said, we're thinking about going 24/7 with an Americana format. It was way before anybody thought Texas red dirt, and play the locals and do everything. And so we plotted for about 6 months, and basically it was just 2 of us. It was Bruce Kidder and myself. And they said, bring your record collection in, what you got, and we're gonna go live on January 1 in '97. That was the day Townes Van Zandt died, and a lot of other great Texas artists like Eddie Schaefer and the list goes on that. But we went live today. Towns Van Zandt passed away, and we've been going ever since. And we're not Kimball and Imbi, or we're just mom and pop, and I make big minimum wage. I guess I didn't mean to get into it. I wanted to make money, but that the format took over, and our listeners are so loyal. It's unbelievable.
You know, it's interesting, and I do hate that we got two panels, and I know it's, I don't want to keep, I could keep you guys for 3 hours, I could keep the next panel for 3 hours, and I certainly know it's sort of the expurgated version of the history and discussion about local radio. But Brett, I'm going to start here, and we'll work our way down real quick. Because the fact of the matter is, I assume people didn't think that it could be done the way you guys did it at the range. And George Gumark will be up here in a moment. He sent me a list of things he wanted to talk about, and one of the things he asked on his list was, how do we bring back the spirit of what they had at the zoo and other stations like that? And I look at you, and I think about the fact that certainly at KXT and KNON for decades is actually very much the kind of thing we all hope for when we think of radio at its very best. So I wanted to ask you, and I'll ask all of you this, do you think what you do now lasts a very long time, in as much as that we all do, as Shaggy said, have music at the palm of our hands? I guess for you, what purpose does radio hold for you now? What do you love about it? God damn, it's a long question to ask. I got a million things I want to ask these folks. I'm saying, Jeff Lyle, this is all your goddamn fault. Trying to sum up 53 years of listening to Dallas radio, and I got one last question here. 30 seconds to answer it. It's not very easy. Just wait till the next panel gets up here. So, is this going to last for a long time, what you're doing and how you do it? Brett, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to first of all say I have also a movie made about me, and it's been award-winning, and it was on the documentary channel for 3 years. Also, I just found out yesterday that I'm up for DJ of the Year with the Texas Regional Radio Music Awards, which I was about 5 years ago, but I never made the finals. I made the finals today, so if you want to vote for Brett Dillon and KHYI, Supermarket Radio of the Universe, whatever they call it, you can just go to trma.net. Yeah, radio is everything to me. I was born with a mic out of the womb, and this is all I was ever programmed to do. I went to school. I knew when I was 9, my dad bought me a shortwave radio, and I was listening to WLS, KOA, even stations in Texas, living in Nebraska. And I went to broadcasting because they told me I had to have a third class, a second class, and a first class. So I got all 3 of them.
But you have great faith that this format and this media will last. This medium will last.
What's that?
You have great faith in this format that it will last. And what gives you that faith?
Oh, I think there's more stations all over in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Because they're just calling it Texas Radio. We call it Americana, but yeah, I mean, I was playing Jack Ingram, Guy Clark, Jerry Jeff, and nobody knew who they were. Now, KNON, I gotta give it to KNON. They had a 2-hour show a day that I always had people that were listening to them, they'd call me and go, "You're kicking Little Boone, or Little John, you're kicking Little John's ass." And they were on 4 to 6, and I was on, I got a 6-hour shift a day for the same shift for 26 years, so.
That's extraordinary.
I love radio.
Jeff?
Well, I've seen every part of the spectrum, from community radio when I started, now to working for the nation's largest chain of radio stations, iHeartMedia. And I think technology is the best thing and the worst thing that's happened to radio. And I say that because now you can have one single DJ voice track 40, 50, 60 stations around the country. And, it's sold to people as, well, isn't it great that he's a good friend of mine, so I'll say it, Billy the Kid from KISS FM, isn't it great that he can be on in Midland, Odessa? That quality of a DJ. Well, what you're doing is you're cannibalizing the feeder system for the college kid in Midland that was hoping to get a radio job and start doing overnight somewhere, because there's none of those jobs left.
Plus, he's not hanging out in your hometown.
Right.
He's not talking about your city.
Right. And I'm not going to defend voice tracking. There is work that goes into it. You want to make sure that you try to localize your presentation as much as possible. But yes, what I would love to see is more listeners be aware of it and somehow petition it. And it just doesn't seem that listeners really know or understand. It's not being delivered to necessarily fool people that these people are not in your city that you're listening to. But I'm not sure that it really, if you can connect with people on a one-on-one level, I don't know that how upset they are that you're not in their city.
Right.
But I will say, the one thing I really like about 92.5 right now, Lone Star, is that, the majority of the staff are folks that you've grown up with in Dallas. It's one of the last rock stations in Dallas where you've got guys who've been on the radio for 30 years. I've been on the air in Dallas for 33. Bo and Jim, the morning show, you love them or you don't love them or whatever. People have grown up with them, and they've got one of the most passionate followings of, any DJs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're 37 years. Debbie Alcacer's been on in Dallas for 20 plus years. So these are people you know. And I think that's important. I think you have to have relationships. And I also think it's important to continue to do appearances. COVID has really done a number on promotions for radio. They're just, they've cut staffs way down, and there just aren't people, to help do anything promotionally anymore. So hopefully we can get back to doing events. I think events drive the passion, the connection. You go back to the Edge Fest concerts that we did. I'm sure George will talk about that. Those are some of the best memories that people from the early Edge years still talk about. So I'd like to think that terrestrial radio will continue to last, but I worry.
Eddie K-KNON's certainly been through it's a struggle almost every year to keep it on the air. It's changed locations numerous times, most recently because it was devastated by the tornado in 2019. Talk about real quick about how strong things are and what you envision for the future of the station.
Man, like I said, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being able to have your own format, per se, introducing people to new music. The thing that has gone away from being a DJ is like, to be a DJ, you're supposed to educate and bring to light to people different music, new music. And sometimes you have to play a certain thing, and it has to be like that. Like, the best thing that can happen to you, as an artist, is to be able to be in your car and your shit comes on the radio. It's gone. It doesn't happen anymore. Well, on my show it does, but that's one of the things, that's the connection thing that you have with people. That to be able to someone can come up to K-KNON. You don't have to have some sort of introduction. You just come up and like, I got this thing here, and I'll listen to it. If I like it, you're there. It's on. If I don't like it, you have to understand. And that's what goes with radio, because they play some god-awful crap. Seriously. They play some, it's disrespectful to our mental, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to be dumbed down or anything like that. And every genre of music has been, fucked up because of the way radio treats it. You know what I mean? Like, every genre has, you would think like funk and all this stuff is gone, but no, you got monophonics, you got all these bands, Cactus Channel, all these great funk groups that are out, you hear nothing about it. You know what I mean? Like, who stole the soul? Well, now we have neo soul. What the fuck? Like, the only time you hear neo is with Nazi. What the fuck is going on? Like, I know it's new, but like, come on, man. Just use soul. Just don't, But, you know what I mean? I think as a DJ,
I think you have to continue to challenge people, and I just want to wish that the majority of people still listen to us to be challenged.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Sometimes I get the feeling that they don't want to be challenged when they listen to radio. And they come to a specialty station like a K-KNON for that, they know what they're getting. But when they're coming to my store, you know, I better be playing Back in Black or goddamn Stairway to Heaven to get it out. And if I'm not, they're going to go to the other store across the street to get it, because that's what they've come.
But there's a difference. I think people listen to 92.5, not necessarily for Back in Black, but they listen to those voices
Right.
that we grew up listening to.
But hearing the
difference.
Back in Black reminds them of when they were in high school and driving in
Sure.
their Camaro and the Bowling
Cruising
Green and all-
Forest,
Yes.
sure, games, I get it.
Right.
And Eddie, it's certainly a different thing as well with what you do in KNON. And Amy,
Oh, you might hear me play Black and Black, because I can mix it in with something. I mean, seriously.
Now
like,
that's
you
cool.
might hear- You might hear Stairway to Heaven. I'll mix the shit out of that.
And that's the way we challenge them.
so anything else, before we wrap up with Nancy, I wanted to ask you, so what role does you, to the point of challenging the listener? Because you do sort of straddle that line, right? It is a bit more mainstream than KNON, but you're certainly still able to have that freedom. And I am sort of curious where KXT heads now that you're no longer kind of in charge of it.
I mean, I'm not sure where it's heading, but I mean, I'm hopeful that it's heading in a good direction. I do think that there's a reason why public radio is at an all-time, peak right now with listenership, and it's because we're the stations that are having, again, that local connection with our listeners. As far as what radio looks like in the future, I mean, when I think about it, and you see it shifting, like, you've seen it shift dramatically in the last 5 years with radio stations out there. I almost think of radio stations now as, they have the ability to be like a media hub in their local community, and it can go far beyond what's on the radio dial. You see radio stations doing awesome video content that artists are using, that are getting like a national audience for, the fact that everything's online now. Radio stations already have a national audience or have the ability to have one. Radio stations are adding news elements and have music blogs going. They're the resources for the community for concert calendars, and I think if radio stations really, really embrace that, it's not going anywhere.
You sound like you're talking about the radio station that Nancy used to work for in 1982, 1983, and 1984.
Yeah, fearless. The DJ has to be fearless. I mean, take chances, go off the grid. I'm gonna disclose something here. The last few times I've done shows on KNON, I was broadcasting from my phone. Because who wants to lug a giant crate of records up there? My phone has music in it, and I can set up the playlist. I'm still choosing the music myself. I'm as spontaneous as I ever was. But I've seen DJs do things like somebody calls on the phone, a listener calls on the phone, they want to hear something. The DJs at KNON don't have it in the physical CD racks. Yes, they still have CD racks there. But a DJ will whip out his phone and he'll punch it up on YouTube and he'll plug it in and he'll say, I'll play that for you right now. And yeah, but here's the thing. Is there anybody in this room tonight that is under the age of 18? If you are, stand up or raise your hand or holler out. Anybody under 18?
There's one person.
How old, stand up, how old are you? 14? 13. Did you come here tonight just because you came with your parents or because you were interested in this topic?
Or did you come with your grandparents?
I can't hear you. You're interested in this topic?
No, he came with his parents and his grandparents.
Oh, grandparents. No. If there's a future for radio, it's in that 14-year-old kid who, don't ask me what the future of radio is. Ask that 14-year-old. Find that 16-year-old girl who's walking down the street to her job thinking, man, I want to make something happen. That's where the future is.
That's a beautiful way to end our first panel. Thank you, Amy, Eddie, Jeff, Brett. I can't thank you enough.